Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the House of Agar Show. I am your host, the fucking Muppet. I sound like fucking Kermit. I'm the man of the house, JT Auger. I'm not a cartoon character. Well, kind of. Anyway,
Yeah,
the
that is
way
very
this show
debatable.
works is the way this show works is it's a round table open panel discussion, and we sometimes we have a guest. Tonight we have a special guest. Dominic West is with us all the way from England. Hey, what time is it over there where you're at right now?
It's 2:00 in the morning.
On Wednesday.
Yeah.
He's in the future.
Yeah.
He can tell us what's going to happen. So, anyway, the way this works is we have everyone muted except for the co-hosts and our guest. And then as we discuss things throughout the show, which is now only 2 hours long, as was made, that change was made just last week. But if anybody wants to be unmuted while we're discussing something, if you want to join the conversation, let us know in the show chat, in the text channel. This is not a family-friendly show. We curse, we talk about all kinds of wild and crazy shit. If you're easily offended or a child, please get the fuck out. Other than that, with me tonight are, of course, my co-hosts, Adam. Sativa might be here. Joel and Nicole should be here.
I'm here.
Joel's here.
Hey! He's eating not Mexican food.
Finished, actually, but yes,
Oh.
It was not Mexican.
How was it? Was it good? Because it wasn't Mexican?
The flavor was good. The only problem was it's really weird, and this actually didn't come from their favorite butcher, which explains the cut.
Fatty as fuck.
Even though it didn't look fatty.
I'm so pissed off. I worked my ass off, and then like the few bites that weren't filled with fat were delicious, but the meat was crazy fatty.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really bizarre because you couldn't tell that from looking at it when it was not cooked. It looked like there was very little
tell
fat.
Before it was cooked that it was fatty?
No, I think it
That's
was so
weird.
incredibly dispersed and marbleized that, instead of like big chunks of fat, it was just all throughout, and it just wasn't a good cut of meat. I don't know.
That's weird.
Yeah, but I'm going to save the sauce and use it to make a different meat dish tomorrow, because fuck doing all that work and then throwing it away. Come on.
Yeah, you gotta salvage what you can.
Exactly. The polenta was good.
Yeah, polenta was great, and the sauce is fantastic.
Yep.
I don't know what polenta is.
Polenta's like you know what grits are, right?
Yeah.
It's like Italian grits. It's made with cornmeal, and it's just creamy, delicious Italian grits is what it is. Yeah, I made that.
Because grits don't have flavor. Like
no,
grits.
they don't. The cornmeal has a little bit of a flavor, but then you have like salt, pepper, garlic, a little bit of cheese and butter, and it's just delicious. And then I put wilted chard over the top of that, and that part was good. Yeah, it was a meat that was the shit part.
Dominic, do you guys have grits? Do you know what grits are?
I've heard of it, but it's not really a thing here.
It's not even like
You're missing
just an
out.
American thing. It's like a Southern American thing.
It really
Yeah,
Like
it is a southern thing.
Southern U.S.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you knew what they were or had ever had them. You're not really missing out. They can be good depending on how you make them, but grits by themselves are just it's kind of like
They're a blank
It's like-
canvas.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
a
it's a
blank
blank
canvas,
canvas.
so whatever
Like
you
rice.
put in there is what makes them good.
Oh, okay.
You have
Hell
cream
to the
of
no
wheat
on
over there,
grits.
right?
Sorry, what?
You have cream of wheat over there, something like that?
Yes.
Okay, it's like cream of wheat without any flavor. It's like a bland thing, and then you add whatever you want to make it tasty.
Yeah, I think I knew. I think when I was a kid, some woman, I don't know if she was related to me or not. It's a distant memory, but some woman would make grits, and she would throw butter and like brown
Yep.
sugar and cinnamon, and
Yep.
it was the most amazing thing. It was
Uh-huh.
so good.
Yeah,
So-
they be very good.
Okay, enough about our dinner.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, now move on
So,
to my dinner. Okay, so I'm looking at
What's
some really good looking bratwurst right now, right in front of me that I just cooked.
Oh.
Oh, yum.
This is not going to be an
Bratwurst
actual
is
segment,
good.
but it is tasty.
What do you prefer, bratwurst or kielbasa?
What?
Bratwurst or kielbasa?
I don't think I've ever had kielbasa.
You've
Really?
never had kielbasa?
No.
Jesus, dude. That's just weird.
Okay.
Sorry.
That is weird. I don't
It
even
is
know how
very
to.
weird.
I don't even know who you are anymore.
Okay. I probably shouldn't tell you that, like, had you not framed it in this context, I wouldn't. If you had said kielbasa, I'm like, I would have responded with, I know that's a food, and that's all I know.
No, it's sausage. It's really good.
Okay.
I enjoy it. I think
I'll be
it's
sure
really.
to try it.
You can have it. It's so good that you can eat it cold or hot. It's good either way.
Yep.
So anyway, all right, off of the food subject. Dom, by the way, you are. We're gonna start your interview around probably 6:30, maybe sooner, but around 6:30. But you are welcome to join in and chime in on anything that we're going to discuss between now and then. Is that okay?
When he says 6:30, he means his time,
Okay.
I assume.
Yes.
I do mean. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I wasn't thinking.
California.
You're
Not
right.
everyone's in
It's-
California.
right. So it would be 2:30 for you.
Just say
Okay.
30 minutes from now.
Yeah,
That's
that
probably
works.
an easier
Yeah,
way of.
that helps.
20,
Yeah.
23 minutes from now. So
Got
anyway,
it.
I want to talk about a couple of things. I know that we're not going to talk about Endgame, at least in regards to what's actually in the movie. And that's fine. We'll wait. The reason we're waiting, so just so everybody knows, is so that we can give you, the audience, enough time to go out and actually see it, so that we're not spoiling anything for anybody. So
Oh,
I think
I already spoiled it for myself.
you already spoiled it for yourself.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Oh, did you go and see it? Is that what you mean?
No, I have a habit of spoiling things before I see them on purpose.
Oh.
What?
All right. You know what?
My wife
I've
does
done
that
that
too.
a
It's
couple of
freaking
times,
weird.
but I don't usually do that. But there's been a couple of times where I've gone ahead and done that. But so even though we're not going to spoil the show, we will talk about Endgame in depth a couple of weeks from now. I think the 14th.
Yeah,
Adam?
May 14th.
May
So
14th
that,
is
I
when we're
believe,
going
is
to
2 weeks from now.
discuss the actual depth and details of
The full
movie itself.
spoilerific interview. I say interview.
But I will
Review.
I do want to talk about the results. Financially, this thing is looking like it's going to break all the records there are. This thing's due to make more money than any movie on record, going the way it's going.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because the results are what they are, and it's doing so well, and it's so well received by most. I have my issues with it, and I really want to talk about that, but I guess we gotta wait. But anyway, because of how well it's being received and how well it's doing financially, I'm curious if this is going to be if this is going to set a precedent for how movie franchises are going to go how they're going to play out moving forward, not just for superhero movies, but other movies as well, because this is the culmination of 10 years and what is it, something like 22 movies. And there's without getting into spoilers, there are comments and scenes and things that play out in this Endgame that almost all of those movies over the past 10 years are referenced. And so it's kind of it's fan service, the movie, really, but it works, I guess. A lot of people really like that. And I'm wondering if that's kind of what we're going to see. Are we going to start seeing more studios kind of working with a long-term plan in mind, like a 10-year plan to then come to one movie that references the last however many movies they pack into the last 10 years? Are we going to, you know what I'm saying? Is this kind of the precedent that we're going to be
I don't
seeing
even know if it's
moving
a precedent necessarily, because there's been plenty of movie series before. It's just
but nothing like this.
They're not typically as well done. Like the only reason that we're at this point is because the original Iron Man was so good, which then, led to more Marvel movies in that cinematic universe. They had this plan, and if the early movies hadn't been very good, then it would have just died out. It would have been that, and that's it. But they did it well, and I don't think there's any director out there that hasn't thought, oh yeah, I'm going to make 22 movies in 10 years, or any studio exec. That's not a new thought. Connected. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, can you think of any time where anything similar has ever been done? I kind of feel like this is a milestone.
The only real difference between this with what you're saying is how it went back and referenced a bunch of all the old movies in this particular one, which is fine if you love the other movies. If you're somebody like me or Nicole who only likes a few of the Marvel movies, then when we eventually see it, we'll be like, this means nothing to us. But we're kind of downers on the whole thing because we think it's, especially the Avengers in general, is trash, the movies.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. I mean,
and remember, we've never read any of the comics, have no interest in any of them. I'm pretty sure I've never read any of those Marvel characters whatsoever.
Oh, okay. See, I was a bit of a nerd as a kid growing up, so I read those. I read the comics.
Yeah, I preferred books to comics, so I ended up just reading novels instead of comic books.
Well, I read those too, jackass.
I know you said
I really doubt you did. But reading comic books doesn't make you a nerd.
It did.
No, it doesn't.
Ago, it fucking did. 30 years ago. Jesus.
Whatever.
Oh, what was it?
Back to the movie.
You know what? Speaking of old, did you guys see that Arnold Schwarzenegger went to his son's, his love child's graduation? I think that was it a college graduation?
No, it was high school.
It was high school. Okay. Do you guys remember when the story broke out that he was cheating?
Yeah.
I mean, does it feel like it was that long ago?
No, it feels like it was 4 or 5 years ago.
I know. Wait, he went where? His love child's graduating from high school? God. Motherfucker. I was like, son of a bitch, it was that long ago? How fucking old am I? That was such a downer. I was
like, it didn't come clean for a few years though. I think it happened and then that it didn't go into the media for a couple of years until it had been over.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Until it became too obvious for him when he became 6'7" and 500 pounds. Oh, there's a striking resemblance to you now.
Okay, so the kid was born, and then we didn't hear about him cheating until years later. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he was a young kid, but he wasn't a newborn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, young Englishman, for making me feel less old.
No worries. Anytime.
So, what else is going on? There's a couple of things since we're on the entertainment segment. There is a film called The Professor and the Madman, which is about the Oxford
English dictionary.
Yeah, Oxford English, the beginnings of it. Oxford decides they're going to compile the entirety of the English language into one volume, and it takes place late 19th century. It stars Mel Gibson and Sean Penn. Some people love them. Some people think they're overrated. I grew up watching them both, so I know that they have their flaws, but I think they're both talented artists when it comes to acting. And it shows in this film. It's just a beautiful film. What's her name? She was in Game of Thrones. She was the one who married Joffrey, and she died.
Natalie Dormer.
Yeah, Natalie Dormer. She's so beautiful. She's in this too. And the story centers around this sort of the guy that Oxford gets to head the project, played by Mel. Who's just he's a decent guy, and they're struggling. He's struggling to get through the project. It's kind of slow going, and he starts getting these letters from this this doctor. He's an American doctor who's played by Sean Penn, and which helps immensely. I won't give any of the details. I'll let you go and watch this, but it's just a human interest movie. I mean, it's I don't know how historically accurate it is. I didn't go and check, but apparently, at the very least, they show pictures of this doctor and the professor both at the end of the film, so you know that it's at least based in some sense of reality. And the story itself, if it's anything close to accurate, it's pretty amazing. It's a shocking but truly beautiful film, heartwarming, and I definitely, it's very interesting. It's not a snore fest whatsoever. It's got a good pace, so I definitely recommend it. It's a really good film. Billions, if anybody's watching that, I keep recommending it. I don't think it's getting a lot of traction. I don't know. But it's so good. And the last couple of episodes have been really, they've thrown a couple of real bombs out there in the storyline. And it's been really good. I don't want to give any details away on that either. I wish one of you did watch it so that we could kind of go back and forth on it. But that's all on the entertainment side. Does anybody watching anything that they want to talk about?
No.
All right. What's big over there on your island besides Doctor Who? Wait, Doctor Who's not big anymore, huh? Since they made him a girl.
It's not. I don't know if that's the reason. It's just, I don't know. It's just not.
Was it dropping in popularity before that?
Yeah. It was going downhill long before that.
Do you think that the decision to make the Doctor a female in this, I think, is it still the current season?
I don't think that was a major thing. Like, I get for some characters.
Well, I was going to ask, do you think they did that to kind of drum up to breathe new life into the show, get people watching again?
Maybe, but she is a really good actor. Like, over here, she's well known. Like, she was. If people were thinking it's about time she had a go, people wanted her to do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She's been in a few.
I've seen her in things before. I don't think she's a bad actress whatsoever. But and I'll admit, I am not an avid fan. I have not dug into Doctor Who as of yet, so I'm not. I don't really. I know it's really popular over here. You've got a cult following over here.
Oh yeah, you guys are away with it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the people who like the show over here are obsessed.
Here it's more of a family thing. Like, if you're a family and you've got young kids, you'll all watch it together.
Oh really?
Yeah, but
I didn't know that.
I think most people grow out of it, and the nerds kind of stay with it.
Not us. Not over here. We're fucking children.
It's the same with Harry Potter. I mean, it's the same with Harry Potter, isn't it? The Americans who love Harry Potter really love it.
God.
Oh
yeah.
My God. Well, I mean, I feel like that's tied to those who grew up reading it. And the kids who grew up watching the movies. Because there you go. There's a film franchise that lasted for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted an example of one that I just gave myself one. That I don't think there's people. I think the majority of the fan base here in America are the people who were kids, who their parents read the books to them, and then they grew up watching the films.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot. We have what is it? Universal Studios, and they've got like a whole section of the theme park that's dedicated.
It looks amazing too. I would love to go.
It is, and it has there's a ride, like I guess you would call it a roller coaster. It's fucking phenomenal. It's one of the most amazing rides I've ever ridden.
Which ride are you talking about?
The I don't know what it's called. It's just the hair. It's like the only real Harry Potter ride.
Because they there's one that's like kind of a like 3D motion thing that you go through on the track. But there's that one. And then they also rebranded the Dueling Dragons to be like basically the dragon sequence from Goblet of Fire. Like the Dueling Dragons coasters, it's two roller coasters that kind of intertwine with each other. And
is that at Universal here in Hollywood?
No, Orlando.
Oh, okay. That's why I don't know.
Universal. Yeah, the good one.
Yeah. The one that you don't have to go to California to enter.
No, you just might get eaten by a gator while you're there.
Yeah.
6 and 1/2 dozen of it, or the other, I guess. No, but from what I understand, that one's bigger, as is your Disney World.
Yeah.
But still, our shit's original. Fuck off.
Original shit. Yeah, there you go.
You're a dick. I hate you.
Is that a play on the homelessness problem of crapping in the streets? You know.
We do have that problem. I don't know if that's Hollywood though. That's more Frisco and San Diego.
Yeah, San Francisco.
Which is weird because both of the it's. I'm not gonna say that there's a connection, but it is kind of weird that the shitting in the streets problem just happens to be in the two most prominently gay areas of California.
That's part of it.
Like I don't. Yeah. I'm not saying that's connected in any way. I don't know.
I mean, this is how they are connected. Is that largely gay and gay-friendly areas tend to vote overwhelmingly left, and the left has this reluctance to crack down on homelessness. So it's really that.
And also,
it's not that it's not that the gays caused the homeless to poop in the streets. That like using evil gay magic.
I don't mean to say that at all.
That's not how that works.
Too mean to say that. That's exactly what you were implying.
It really is. No, I wasn't saying that gays are like forcing homos. Or I mean, homeless. I'm not saying gays are forcing the homeless to shit in the streets or anything.
Oh God!
I think they just can't help it because they're so loose. So they just can't.
Really, can you imagine if gays were just like, "Listen here, hobo, you shit in that street, or I'm gonna beat your ass." That would be so strange. That would be weird.
Things have happened.
All right, so this conversation took a turn.
Shockingly, yes.
Speaking of all of that, actually, did anybody else see the I had posted in the group a few days ago an article related to a certain California school district where they're teaching pedophilia as an orientation.
I saw that.
There's a short video of what looks to be a public meeting with the school district leaders, I'm guessing. Like between them and the parents. And one of the parents, a woman, is filming with her phone, and she's asking questions. A couple of people have said that she was being combative. I didn't feel she was. I felt there was a bit of. I mean, if
her accusation is true, then she deserves the right to be combative, because that's really messed up.
I agree.
Well, I mean,
the issue is how much truth is there in this claim.
Right. Well, she asks flat out, are you teaching pedophilia as a sexual orientation? And the woman she's talking to, who I understand to be, I don't I don't I don't know if
Some kind
she's
of
just a
administrator,
teacher
probably.
or somebody involved in, like on the school council. Um, but she comes back, and that woman is uh, very sort of defensive and kind of rude in the way she responds. And that's my issue with it. People who are saying, well, I don't know if that's really what they're doing. If it wasn't, and one of the parents said, hey, are you teaching my kid that touching kids is just a sexual orientation, and they weren't teaching that, there should have been oh my God, no, like, please,
Yeah.
that's
you would
not at
think.
all what we're doing. But that's not what she
agree.
did. She said, well, there's a historical precedence, okay? Very smug, very snotty, and said, so, we're letting them know that there throughout history there've been many different sexual orientations, and that's one of them. And we think it's because of its historical significance that we need to teach that. Which to me confirms you are teaching it as a sexual orientation. If you want to teach kids that, hey, back in history, it used to be okay to fuck kids. All right, fine. But don't tell them that was just a sexual orientation. It's a crime. And there's a big
Yeah.
fucking difference. And so I don't know. That's how I feel about it. Maybe it's not so dastardly, but it seems to fall in line with the very leftist way that California is going. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
shouldn't be doing that.
teaching it and presenting it as an orientation almost sounds like they're teaching it as something that is acceptable and should be accepted. I'm okay with them, especially that age kid and even younger, teaching that there are pedophiles and watch out for them, and here's how you watch out for them, and here's what you do. But teaching it as something that's some people are like this, and y'all need to learn about it, and that's their orientation, and we should accept them.
Yeah, even using that verbiage.
Yeah, that's what makes
orientation.
It because for years we've heard. For years we've heard don't shame people for their sexual orientation. Like their sexual orientation is something that you can't help. You were born this way, and that's okay. And like blah 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 blah. And that's fine when you're talking about homosexuality. But pedophilia, that's a different monster. That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a sexual orientation. Dominic, what is there anything similar going on with the school districts there in England? I know that there's been a pushback, at least I've read a couple of things about a couple of schools caving in to the Muslim population who've been openly against teaching homosexuality, and they've had a couple of schools stop it.
They haven't been caving yet, and that's the problem. There's so here we don't have teaching districts. We don't have if I'm watching how things are in America, there's normally these meetings where there's a board meeting and there's people who chime in. It's almost like a town hall kind of thing. We don't have that here. It's
what do you have?
It's standardized across the UK as a country. So you don't have different
sons of bitches. I wish we had that.
We don't have states. So if you go to one part of England, the other part of England, it'll be the same stuff. Generally speaking, there's a bit of wiggle room, but mainly it's the same stuff, same level of education, so that it's across the board. And we do have what's called so it changes name all the time. It used to be citizenship, now it's sex education and personal health, and that kind of stuff is one of the lessons that are taught. But paedophilia, as far as I'm aware, doesn't enter into it at all. The only thing you're taught, I think, would be danger. To look out for danger rather than this is an orientation. Yeah. In terms of those news stories, I've been following that quite closely as well. It's quite interesting. It's what happens when you have a mix of cultures. Like mixing races is fine, mixing ethnicity is fine, but when you have two cultures living along side by side, this issue tends to happen. And yeah, they haven't caved. So I was where they haven't caved, but there's calls for.
I'd heard at least. I thought I read that at least one school gave in. Maybe that was.
Maybe I'm not sure about. Maybe it might be one school, but there was a whole load of schools because there's a few areas that have quite a high population of Muslims, particularly from areas like Pakistan, Bangladesh, and I say high population. It's still a minority, but it's high population.
You know what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that. So over the years, as part of sex education, they're teaching about different orientations, which is a good thing, because people, when they look back, gay people look back, they realize they felt that way since about 13, 14, a lot of them, sometimes younger. So it's good for them to at least be aware that gay people exist and that it's okay. But there was a pressure group started, a group of Muslims, really, because it used to be always Christians, but our Christians are pretty lame, so they're called it now. Christians who are always against teaching homosexuality, but now it's Muslims, and it's the same old story again, but with Muslims. My religious freedom isn't being respected. Don't teach homosexuality, you'll make them gay, that kind of thing. And they started holding protests outside a group of schools in Birmingham, and this one teacher, who also happens to be gay, so he's an easy target. He was really pushing for this education to be proper and scientific and inclusive. And so there's these books when it's like, some people have a mum and a dad, but one of your mates might go home and there's two dads there, and that's cool. And just simple things like that. There was nothing about gay sex. They didn't talk anything about any of the stuff that underage kids shouldn't hear. It was literally just relationships. Some of your friends might have two mums, and that's fine. And
so it's more just like awareness that this is a thing that exists, and
absolutely
general kind of acceptance of it, but not like, I don't know how to.
They weren't showing them pictures of anal sex or anything. I think
yeah.
And I think because
small miracles.
People saying things like, "Oh, they're far too young to learn about this," and I don't know, maybe it's a bit radical, but my view is you can learn about homosexuality at the same time you learn about heterosexuality. It's not more difficult.
You and I have argued over this actually before, which is curious, which is interesting. Do you remember we in group we were? I think it was about the library, the book readings. Was it the book readings? The drag queen book readings? And I think I was saying I had, and that somehow drew into a conversation about children who were involved in drag.
Yeah. It was a post about should somebody like making a law about outlawing child drag shows.
And
that.
Right, and then you and I were Dominic. You and I had got into a discussion about the intricacies of like, well, why would that be wrong? What's the big deal? And I know that I think we kind of came to an understanding, but it was a fun and interesting. I mean, I think we both still disagree, but but not where it counts. I think you at least had said that anything that involves sexualization, you agree, is no place for a child.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, right. Because a child doesn't even often know when they're being sexualized. So if they're being encouraged to do something that sexualizes them, then that's wrong. My view was that it can often be the same thing as drag, but they don't always overlap. So it is possible for a child to want to dress up and do a show in girls' clothing without it being sexual. And your view seemed to be that was intrinsically sexual.
Yeah, it's right. My perspective on drag is that if it's drag, it is inherently sexual in nature.
I mean,
that's where you and I were arguing, or disagreeing.
Yeah,
Well, because I think maybe the issue here is that, because I don't disagree with you, Dominic, about, at least from the child's perspective, that if the child has an urge to, dress up in drag, that's not sexual, because children aren't really sexual beings at that point in their
Right.
life. From their perspective, it's very innocent. The problem is the other side of that. How are adults going to see that? Because every
Yeah.
single
I don't think the other
context in
side
which
is
drag
either, though.
exists, it's a sexual context.
Yeah, it's the
So-
adults that are the problem.
But adults will always be the problem, and that's why I was saying the context matters. So, for example, if a paedophile wanted to see kids going around half naked, they could just walk into a local swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you going to make that illegal? Like, there's nothing sexual about that, but they could
to be honest,
get off to it.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going to
they
make
do.
that
And
Well, I
illegal
think
for.
you'd have to go ahead and outlaw child beauty pageants too, or radically alter
Yeah.
them, because same thing right there.
I mean, there's so many things that an adult could go to if they wanted to and get off. I guess for me, the point is the child in danger? So are you reinforcing it? So there is adults with a child when they're at a swimming pool protecting them. They don't go off with the adults or whatever. So I can get why it looks so perverse to see a child doing drag. Maybe it's just because I live in a really leftist liberal part of my country. But I see drag pretty much all around me, and I see sexual drag and I see non-sexual drag and I see drag done by all ages, and I can tell when it's not okay, when it is okay. And I've seen a young person do drag in front of families, crowds, including kids, adults. It did not look sexual at all. Now, there could have been an adult
Here's the
there.
problem with that.
There could have been an
If
adult
I may
there.
say real quick,
Yeah, go for it.
I understand what you're saying, and I can understand how you're able to differentiate between what is okay and what isn't, what's sexual, what's not. But we can't trust that all adults and all parents are going to be able to make that same distinction correctly, or even willing to make that same distinction correctly. And so that kind of puts that child in an endangering situation. That
You're right. We can't
did you say I'm wrong?
No, I'm saying you're right. We can't police their thoughts. We can't read their minds. You're right in that
Right.
regard.
And that to me is
Okay.
it would. That's why I feel it's too much of a risk for children. It's just an inappropriate position to put kids in, and that's why I feel that, I mean, personally, that kids and drag have no place together. You want to do drag, you can do that. You want to dress, in your mom's shoes and wear, girl clothes or whatever, and you're at home and your parents deem it okay. All right. But I think in a public forum, I just think it's inappropriate, and I don't think it should be something that should be encouraged, because of course anybody who is a fucking predator is going to see that as an opportunity.
Yeah, as long as they don't have the opportunity to do anything about that. That's what I'm saying. I don't like the thought of an adult going to a child drag show and in their head getting off on it. I don't like that either, but that same person could do exactly the same thing at a public swimming pool, and we don't like that either. All we do in each scenario is keep the kid away from that adult. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, tell me.
I do, and I'm working that out in my head.
I mean, we really, what it comes down to, everything that we've just been talking about, the pedophilia, homosexuality, both those things being taught in schools, the child drag shows, whether or not that's okay or not. I feel like all of these are ideally best handled by parents. And do we really want the government stepping in and regulating all of that? Because there really are already protective services in place,
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, the problem is what constitutes abuse, because, I mean, well, the thing to keep in mind is, like, from the American perspective, there's really only one prominent child drag queen, and not too long ago, he was dancing at a I believe, a strip club, like with for money.
Yeah.
It was a very sexual
It's
thing,
gotten
like
messed
undeniably
up.
sexual thing. It's not just like, oh, you could take this sexually. No, it was. And like this
Yeah.
kid is like 12.
Well, in
And
that case, then if it could,
so
yeah.
that's kind of the we have never seen an instance of a child drag queen being non-sexualized, like, or even like possibly non-sexualized. It's like this is what we associate this with.
And you know what's funny too
Yeah.
is we're coming from two different perspectives in the sense that sexuality and how it's viewed is very different from here in America as opposed to in Europe. It's kind of juxtaposed or reversed when it comes to sexuality and violence. Over there, violence is sort of the untouchable thing, the bad thing, that you want to hide everyone away from and cover your kids' eyes from. You know what I'm saying? Whereas over here, we can show blood and guts, and apparently nobody cares. But you pop a nipple out in the middle of, the halftime show at the
Super Bowl.
Super
Well,
Bowl,
not here.
and everybody
But in
loses their
Spain-
fucking minds.
Not here. In Spain, they're bad for that, or Italy, but on the continent, here, not so much.
You guys still have some prudishness?
Yeah, we're English. But homosexuality, I think, has always been a little bit more accepted here than in America. So let me ask you, I don't know how big like soaps are over there, like a soap opera,
They're
like a daytime
big.
TV show. So here, you could have a gay couple making out on a soap opera. You could have that 10 years ago, and that would be just as okay as if it was a man and a woman. There's nothing about that. How would that be over there if there was a scene where there was a guy and a guy kissing?
Now,
10 years
I don't
ago,
think it would
definitely
be an
not.
issue.
10 years ago, definitely not.
Yeah.
But now it would be accepted, but it would definitely be otherized in the context of the show. It would be a big deal, according to like the writers. Like they would write the show in such a way as to make it a big deal. Because there's still kind of an attitude of
first.
like,
you have to go through that though.
Yeah.
So like here, when it first happened, it was a thing, and now in all of the soaps, there's about 3 or 4 different characters who are gay, and they're not just that gay character. They all their character in their own right. They just happen to be gay, and so it's not like a front thing about them. It's just like a reflection of society, and so they might hook up with one guy, and then you don't see any sex stuff because it's a daytime show. You just see them kissing or whatever.
Which I think that's the right way to do it, is like because it's so obnoxious when the writers assume that the audience is going to be when it's forced, is if the writers think that the audience will be interested in this character because they are gay. It's like, no, that's it's so annoying, it's so obnoxious. What the right way to do it is write an interesting character that is interesting in and of themselves, who happens to be gay.
Do you think you have to go through
their sexuality should be really secondary? What'd you say?
I was like, it almost seems like you can't just, or it's really difficult to jump from no gay characters in a show to there are now gay characters and it's fine. It's almost like they have to have gone through that.
It's a stage.
Here's our gay character.
But honestly, most of our shows now, of our primetime stuff, sitcoms, dramas, they all, and have had for years, all have gay characters. A lot of them.
It's just that the sexual identity.
It's not centered. It's especially in the ensemble cast, it's not centered around that. I mean, that's part of who they are. But you literally can't turn on a show without there being, at least one gay. Now there's lots of trans characters. It's ubiquitous at this point.
Yeah,
it's the vocal minority.
Yeah, I think, and they're always really flamboyant as well in America. I've noticed. I just flick on a show, and
usually
there's a gay guy on there.
If you happen upon a gay pride parade here in America, holy shit!
Oh, we have those as well. We have those, yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know if they're the same over there. You guys, like you said, you still have a little bit of prudishness. This is where it all goes out the window. There, people
yeah, with
shoving things in other people's orifices. There's penises just flopping around everywhere you look. There's people on the sides of on the sidewalk getting, surrounded by a crowd of people praising them as they get pierced with a Prince Albert. I mean, it's fucking crazy. People dragging other naked people by a leash. Lots of studded leather.
You have that, but I haven't been to a Pride myself yet. I was meant to go last year, but I'm a university student and I'm living in the gay capital of the UK. It's like the gayest place.
The gayest place.
The gayest place in the whole country. Yeah, like it's known. Like people will move here because it's so gay if they're gay.
Sounds like Long Beach.
I mean, I guess so. If that's the gay capital of the US.
I don't know if it's the gay capital, but it's the
San
closest.
Francisco.
This is in California. That
San
yeah,
Francisco.
someone knows.
Yeah,
someone just asked me on the
Fran.
chat. Someone on the chat just asked me, "You live in Brighton?" That's exactly where I live. No.
That's funny.
It's fun.
Hey, let me ask you a quick question. Swindon, is that a city?
Yeah, I always forget if somewhere's a town or a city because the cities are the same size as the towns now. But yeah, it's a place.
Oh, and does that place have a reputation?
Are you going to talk about the Antifa thing that I saw posted? Because
no, I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Did something happen there with Antifa? No, I was going to ask because there were MPs who were discussing and his comment to that about I wouldn't even rape you, and she said, and he lives in Swindon, and all the other MPs started laughing like it was some sort of inside joke. So I was curious
I think
why that was.
I don't know. It has a bit. There's quite a few places we love. For some reason, we love to shit on our own towns and cities. We love to take the piss out of them a lot. So it's just one of those places. It's one of those. Yeah, but I've noticed that if someone's doing a comedy show and they say, I was recently in like Brooklyn, people from Brooklyn will go, woo, and shout out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. People will just like boo or something or laugh at them. So maybe that was it.
That's funny.
So there's nothing particular about Swindon, but it is in that group of ones that people like to shit on a lot.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't think there was any inside joke there. It was just, it's Swindon. Who wants to go there?
All right. Fair enough. So, I guess we can kind of consider that we've already begun the interview.
That was a very smooth transition into the interview. It was very
nice.
gradual.
It really was. But I wanted to kind of get onto the three topics specifically that I had labeled or listed. Hang on a second. Let me bring them up. If I can fucking find them. Hang on. Here we go. Okay, so Dominic, you and I, a few days ago, spent several hours discussing some differences. And it started with the question of should prisoners, specifically felons, be allowed to vote either while they're incarcerated or after they're incarcerated? And you and I were at odds over that because my position was that I didn't think they should be allowed to, not only when they're incarcerated, but even after. Whereas you were questioning that. And so we got into that discussion. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe so that everybody who's listening and the co-hosts as well can kind of be brought up to speed, what your position on that topic was.
Okay, so I understand it might not be the most popular position, but well, actually, I'm at the moment in terms of well, we don't have the term felon over here, but I'll put it in American terms. Felons in prison, ones who are actually serving jail time. I'm undecided myself if they should be able to vote. I'm leaning more towards no, because they're not part of society in a normal sense. So they're on pause. They're on hold from partaking in it. However,
So you're talking specifically while they're incarcerated.
Yes, but my position when they're out, when they're free as such, as free as they can be, given they now have a record, my position was that if they're going to be released and they've done their time, so that they should be able to vote. So it's kind of like before they were in prison, they could vote. They're in prison, they can't, and now they can again because they've done their time.
Right.
And that pretty much is my position.
Well, can I interject really quick? I think it's important to note that your position on this was specifically regarding the slippery slope that exists when allowing the government to dictate on any terms in any situation when it's okay to strip someone of their rights. Even something as small as voting, you felt correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that was kind of the crux of your position, was that by allowing that, you're opening the door to them saying, well, in this case over here, then we can also dictate what rights can be stripped and why, and it just leads down a very dark path. Am I correct on that?
I guess that's one way. That wouldn't be how I would put it. I would put it.
Please put it your way then.
Okay. So the reason you have there's 2 points I'd have, because obviously the main rebuttal to my position is something to do with they've made such a bad decision. They're not rational. I don't want them, a murderer, voting on my rights. That kind of thing, which I understand. But my perspective would be, you punish someone by giving them. It's proportional. It's proportional, isn't it? So if they get into a fight or do a violent crime, that's not as bad as a murder, when then you have different degrees of murder. So you make the punishment proportional, or at least that's how it's supposed to be. And if that's what you're saying is supposed to be the system, then having a permanent ban on voting for me seems not proportional and doesn't make sense given the crime. Also, I think once they're out of prison, the punishment, they've done it. The punishment should be something that can be served out. And so, so once they've done the crime, they've done it. And my response to you saying, because my understanding is that your rebuttal was, they've shown that they can't make rational decisions. I don't want someone like that voting on my rights. My position was, we don't decide who votes based on how rational we think they are. That is not something we do, and it's not something we should do. Because if you're going to make that a criteria, there are millions of people who don't meet that criteria.
Right. And I agree with you on that. And let me clarify now, which I guess I didn't do early enough the last time we discussed this. That is just one part to several as to the reasons. There's more than just one reason for me as to why I take the position of, I don't think any felon who does who is charged with a hard crime, specifically, at least on a basic level, murder, rape, child molestation.
But there's so many felonies that are.
There are many felonies, and I think there are, and that's why I think violent crimes and crimes that lead to death, for example, I think somebody who is charged with mass distribution of illegal substances like fentanyl. You're talking about somebody who's funneling drugs into the country that are responsible for the deaths of
A
many
shit ton
people.
of
I
deaths.
absolutely think that person should be stripped of their right to vote, at the very least. To me, that kind of crime fits right up there with the rapists, the murderers, and the child molesters. So while I think there are other considerations, and that distribution being an example of that, I'm going to just say, for the purposes of this discussion, the basics, even though it's not relegated to just these, the basics that I'll keep mentioning are rape, murder, child molestation. Hard crimes, violent crimes, anything that fits into that category. So I feel. Go ahead.
Finish your thought, and then I'll share mine.
No. Actually, go. It's a perfect moment for me to pause.
Right.
So go right ahead.
So for me, like, this whole issue, because assuming you're not, of the Bernie Sanders mentality, and you think that felons should have a right to vote in jail, which I think most people would find insane. I think this conversation is kind of a distraction from the fact that, like, if you think about it, you bring up people like, rapists, murderers, child molesters and stuff. Why are they not in jail for life? Why are they even in a situation where, they're released from jail, and they be able to vote? Well, the question is not should they be able to vote, it's why are they out of jail in the first place?
Because they had a good attorney.
I'm going to piss you off later.
There are, because not every murder is the same as every other murder. So we
like
have
felony murder.
Right. Well, felony murder is still...
murder can be fucking bullshit, though, because you were there.
It can be fucking bullshit. You're right.
Yeah.
And the courts can still find you guilty while at the same time acknowledging that it's kind of bullshit, and so therefore give you a sentencing that kind of says, we know that this is kind of bullshit. So you don't get life. Of course.
Yes, you do. No. When they charge you with felony murder, it's so that they will give you the maximum sentence along with everybody else involved. They don't go easy on the people who didn't pull the trigger. That's not how it works. Certainly not in Texas or any state I've lived in.
Well,
felony murder is a whole other
I'm not an expert when it comes to the law, so there are.
These are details, really. It's more philosophical argument, isn't it?
What's that?
It's more a philosophical argument that you're making in terms of, we've got these details, but the point is, should someone who's committed a heinous act be allowed to vote once they've been punished already?
Right. So are you... Well, let me clarify. Joel, are you saying that anybody who gets charged with murder and doesn't get life, but let's say 15 years, is that not a felony because it's not life?
No. Okay, you're misunderstanding. Felony murder meaning it's called different things in different states. Here in Texas, it's felon. It's actually a different term, I think. But anyway, let's say that 4 people go to rob a store, and you're the guy in the car, in the getaway car. If one of the people pulls the trigger, anybody who is part of a felony, and any one person who commits a murder, all of them are liable for the murder. So if it's first degree murder, you all get
As
charged.
Adam is trying to scream right now.
Yeah.
Law of parties, not felony murder.
Yeah, I just unmuted the other Adam, so you are free to give us your legal advice.
Yeah, if you're able, you're welcome to jump in and correct us laymen. Well, I don't mean to speak for anybody else, but I know that my knowledge of the law is minimal. Because I'm a good boy, but I'm really not. But back to my point, just not everybody who commits murder is charged with life, obviously. And so that's why you're going to have situations where people don't get a life sentence and don't live out the rest of their lives in jail, that were somehow directly or indirectly responsible for somebody's death. And so maybe they get out in 15 years. At the end of that 15 years, when they're finally free again, do they deserve to have the right to vote? I don't think so. That's my opinion, because there has to be, and this is where I thought it was very interesting, Dominic, when you and I reached this point in our conversation, you started to ask me, what's the point? Are you trying to prevent something? Like, the crime has already been committed, so you're punishing some. It's not like you can undo that murder or undo whatever that crime was. So shouldn't we be focusing on preventative measures rather than crimes that have already taken place? And you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong in remembering any of this, but I think at that point I had asked, I said, well, so what are you suggesting, that we should just not dole out any punishment for a crime that's already been committed, but instead just go, okay, I guess, no use crying over spilled milk. Let's just figure out how to not spill it again. So just don't ever punish anyone. And you were kind of like, yeah.
Well, hang on. I wasn't like, no.
Go ahead. Tell it how it was.
Now you're making me sound more left than Bernie Sanders. I'm not. No. It's because you framed it in terms of, are you saying we shouldn't punish anyone? We should just look at making sure it doesn't happen again. And to that, I would say, yeah, because making sure it doesn't happen again still involves prison time.
How is that different than what I just said?
Okay. It's slightly different because what you just said implied we should just let them out and make sure it doesn't happen again. To me, that would ensure it happens again.
You're lumping in all consequences under the punishment umbrella. What Dominic is saying is there's a difference between punishment and rehabilitation. And if a crime has been committed, that rehabilitation should be the focus and not punishment.
Okay.
Yeah, to the extent that you don't need punishment so, for example, I think we're being held back by the punishment aspect, trying to balance that with rehabilitation. I don't see anything wrong with just changing it to rehabilitation. And
I understand.
We don't rehabilitate because we're claiming we do, both in your country and mine. The idea is we do a number of these things. We rehabilitate, we punish, we deter, whereas really it's just punishment. That's all we're really doing. The deterrence.
I agree.
That was something that you and I both agreed on, that there was massive, there was a lot of room for massive reform in our judicial system. Our Justice Department it leaves a lot to be desired. I would agree with you on that. That being said, let me state first, yes, I agree, and I said this to you then, I think, I agree. Reformation is important, and it should be sort of the primary focus, because that's humane. However, I don't feel it's rational to expect that punishment isn't needed, or that I get the idea, the idealistic perspective of, yeah, that would be it would be great in an ideal perfect world. It's not realistic. If you don't include a punishment aspect to the response of somebody committing such a crime, a hard crime, a violent crime, what have you, there's a myriad of reasons why punishment is in place, in my opinion. Number one, there has to be a stamp on what you do so that others can see it. In order
I think
as a
are kind of saying the same things in a lot of ways, but you're using different terminology. Because
perhaps.
I mean, I don't believe that he's saying that we need to get rid of jail time and the punishment aspect of rehabilitation, but that the focus should be on rehabilitation, because they say it is now, but that's bullshit. Everything keeps getting worse and worse.
Well, forgive me, I was mistaken then. Dominic,
I'm just saying, I think I'm right, but I could be wrong.
I thought you were saying we should work towards not including punishment as an aspect.
Yes, but I guess it depends what is
what you
punishment?
consider
What is
punishment.
punishment? Yeah, so
Yeah.
for me,
As differentiated from rehabilitation is basically like
and deterrence.
for life.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
depending on the crime.
So
If excluding those who do crimes that have been sentenced for life, like that's done, and we don't even need to talk about those people because that's done.
It's
done and
important
over
though.
with.
It's important though because it begs the question. Okay, what is the purpose of that? And it's because that is a punishment. And it's also a deterrent for other people. Because it shows,
Correct.
okay, this
But
is a grave crime and you should not do this lest you end up like this other guy. It's too late for them, but it's not too late for you. That's the idea anyway. Other Adam says deterrence does not work. Willing to
doesn't.
talk about that.
yeah, it doesn't.
I really want to.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
I
that's
really
the idea.
want to. I really want to make clear one other aspect as to why I believe. Okay, maybe deterrence doesn't work. But I kind of feel like there's another aspect as to why punishment is necessary, and it's because without it, you have pioneer justice. If you do not enact some manner of punishment to satisfy the parties involved that have been affected by the crime that was committed, then they will be left unsatisfied and felt unheard. I mean, this is why we have a system. It's so that people don't go out into the streets and take justice into their own hands, and you just have the fucking Wild West where you shot my cousin, so I'm going to shoot 3 of your family, and now you have the Hatfields and McCoys. You have to have an arbitrary third or an objective third party come in and adjudicate, if you will.
Adam just made a good point.
I'm sorry?
I just noticed third Adam saying, but that is just placating a mob. And I totally agree. What you're effectively saying is the only reason we have to do the punishment is so nastier people don't. And he's not just giving in. And the evidence actually shows that it's the opposite. That if you have a society, it takes a societal change. It won't happen overnight. If you have a society where people are actually accepting and satisfied with the justice system, they don't feel the need to take it upon themselves to enact justice. And I think at the moment in the US, people already try and take vigilante justice, even though there are long sentences, because that's not enough.
Yes, I agree. And that's why and that's my entire point. If you take out with people already acting that way, when we're already trying to say, hey, we're going to take care of this, don't worry about it. Imagine if we said, nah, fuck it, we're not going to do that.
We wouldn't say, nah, fuck it. We'd say, we're going to make sure that we take them into responsibility.
I think we can clarify this if Dominic explains, like, what is your idea? What is just a quick example of what you would recommend being done with someone who is a violent offender, someone who raped someone, horribly beat someone near death? What would your idea of the appropriate approach be for that person? Yeah.
Okay, well, obviously there's never going to be a quick, easy fix, but there are a number of things you could do to move towards that kind of system. I just think that all of them would look on the surface like being too soft. And that's my problem with the PR side of it. So at the moment, if you look at the countries with prisons that involve just locking people up in basically a cage, taking away their freedoms, and that tends to make them angry, more likely to commit another crime when you go out. So if you do the reverse, if you actually say, look, we're going to treat you as a human who actually can be respected, not for the thing you've done, but as a human being, and you allow them limited rights, not necessarily a lengthy sentence, but rehabilitation, education when they're in jail, make it easy enough when they get out for them to be employed. All of these things add up to them not committing a crime again. And if people believe that their jails actually rehabilitate, they're less likely to take vigilante justice. So at the moment, in the US particularly, it's almost impossible to get good employment once you've been a felon. It's almost you can't vote, you can't get good employment, how on earth are you meant to be rehabilitated back into society if that's your
No, I
life?
agree with that. I agree
So,
that there should be some changes to that. It shouldn't be so hard to find a job. There should be more acceptance for, but I think there's an underlying understanding amongst us all that you're not really rehabilitated because the system isn't geared towards rehabilitation. You served
but
your
it can
time.
be.
But
I think
that's
the majority of us expect you're still probably the same person, if not worse. And so we're going to treat you as an undesirable and untouchable.
hence
Yeah,
It's
the
but
not
whole
fair.
problem.
people's
It's a
mind.
cyclical problem then, and it's
Right. I
Yeah.
agree. And I think that certainly deserves to be addressed. I
But
agree.
I think you're being a bit pessimistic. I think now it looks like people are always going to want to be angry. People are always going to want to punish people. Not
Yeah.
necessarily. You look back at what happened in medieval times. People wanted to be lynched in the street. And imagine being in that time and people would have said, there's no way we can ever get rid of capital punishment. There's no way we can ever get rid of torturing someone in the street because people always want to do that. Well, now they don't. And if they do, it's an emotional thing that wears off. No one's seriously advocating for people to be dragged through the street for days on end until they die a slow, painful death. That's not.
I think that's a massive difference. So we're talking about a public display of something. I, I guess the
No,
equivalent.
I get what you're saying. My point is just that you're saying people will always want this. People will always feel like this. And I'm saying, no, they won't. You underestimate the ability for societies to change quite quickly. So
I don't have no. You forgive me. I feel like you're misunderstanding me. I fully um, understand that societies change. I mean, they have been. History shows that for thousands of years. I mean, where we are now as to where we were 1,000, 2,000 years ago is quite different. But the one thing remains: people are the same. We all
no,
still hold the same emotions. We're still the same animal that we've always been. So
actually,
to
a lot of
disregard that and expect us to be this idealistic uh,
mm,
human, that's just, I feel that at least that's where I'm coming from. That's what I'm talking about. You can't
okay,
expect
I
that to go
understand.
away. That's like expecting people to all become pacifists and not feel angry or resentful or violent. You can't take that out. You can't take the monkey out of the man. You can't.
Well, I agree, but what you can do is tame it, and that has actually happened. In fact, if you look
Well,
back,
that's what humanity is. I understand that. It's learning how to control oneself. It's self-control. But
yeah, but again, I think you're being pessimistic. Only a couple of hundred years ago, a couple of centuries ago,
I call it realistic.
yeah,
People are
but
shit, man.
but that doesn't mean they have to act like that. So I'm talking in terms of a few
Well,
centuries.
the people we're talking about didn't have to commit those crimes either, but they did.
Yeah, and to a much lesser extent than would it. So, okay, here's my example. It used to be completely normal to actually duel your opponent. You'd get your guns out, you'd do a few paces, turn around and shoot, and that used to be normal in order to settle relatively minor disputes. And there's
Right.
now, yeah, there are still fights. People get into fist fights. There are still things that happen. But I don't know if you've read anything of Steven Pinker, but if you look at the rate of violence, even male violence, testosterone fueled violence, it's radically gone down. The idea that you actually want to seriously beat or murder someone for calling you a name, yeah, it happens in places, in certain cities. But if you look at the overall rate, it's so much lower. So it is possible for us to tame that inner emotion, that inner beast. And I think that's why I say you're being pessimistic, because, yeah, we'll always have emotions. We'll always have hormones. Those won't evolve for another couple thousand years. But we are able to actually tame that to a surprising degree. So that's why I say you're being pessimistic.
All right, I'm going to take a quick moment. We're going to take a 30-second break for everyone to go and grab a drink if they need to, or a snack, and then we're going to come back.
Okay.
Okay? So just give us 30 seconds, folks. We'll be right back.